You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jesper Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Jesper.
And I'm Autumn.
This is episode 145 of the AmWritingFantasy podcast, and we are back with one of our top 10 episodes. And this time we'll each share 5 fantasy maps that are the worst, and we'll see who can, basically create the best worst list again.
And this one's an interesting challenge to be describing maps while on a podcast. So the YouTube listeners, I think everyone, just go check the show notes. We're going to have links to some of the maps we're talking about. But it'll be, we'll do our best, but I think we can be descriptive enough of what drove us crazy about the map in question.
Yeah, we'll try. At least we have 144 episodes behind us, so hopefully we should be able to think about that this is an audio medium.
I know, compared to some podcasts, we're like middle-aged or something. We're getting into the upper digits here.
yeah. That when you said that reminded me of some of the comments on Facebook around the episode we did about marketing to different generations.
Oh, yes.
And Jason commented on on that post about listening to that episode made him feel really old. And I just had to tell him, like, me too.
Yeah, when your age generation is next to the top, you're like, ooh,
right.
That happened.
Yeah, exactly.
That's never fun.
No, it's not.
So how are things over in Denmark, though?
So this last week has been one of those where it actually started out quite well, but then it just went downhill from there.
No.
Yeah. I mean, the good news was that I went to that interview to become a referee instructor that I mentioned a couple of episodes back. And then the National Football Association actually came back and confirmed that I was selected.
So congratulations!
That was a good start to the week.
That is awesome start to the week.
Of course, I still have an exam to pass, and I have like tons of homework I need to do in preparation as well. Learning like the laws of the game by heart and interesting stuff like that. But it does look like this thing is going to happen, so I'm pretty excited about that.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, but then it went downhill from there, as I said, so first the party who was selling the house that we were negotiating for, they decided that they didn't want to sell anyway.
Oh my gosh.
So they just said that we're going to pull the house off the market. So it's just like a colossal waste of our time, but also money, of course, because we actually paid a building inspector to go out and look at the house and go through it with us, right? So totally waste of time and money. But I really think that these people selling the house, I think they were just in it for the money. They tried to see if they could sell the house with a huge profit. Mm-hmm. And then when it turned out that they couldn't, because when we placed our bid, we bid far less than what they wanted. And then they decided, well, apparently we can't get this much money for the house, so then we're just not going to sell it. But I don't know. I just feel, of course, it's their right. They can do that as they please, but it's really annoying.
Yeah. If you're not, it's not the way to, test your house market by taking unsuspecting people who are sincerely interested in buying a house and be toying with them. That is a little rude.
Yeah, I don't know. It also rubbed me the wrong way, that the way of doing that. But
oh well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. But at least now we know it's not going to be that house. So we'll keep looking and searching and figuring out what to do. But what was worse than that was that our youngest son was also tested positive for corona.
That is so sad. I'm glad he's doing okay.
We talked a bit about it offline already, Autumn. Yeah. So, but yeah, he's been in self-isolation since the the beginning of the week with me sort of attending to him. I'm just a room service guy now. And
Garçon,
I think,
garçon, come here.
I think that part actually he quite like. So he's like, I would like something to eat, and then it's just like me coming with a tray with something food for him and stuff like. So that part I think he likes, but he's doing all right after the circumstances, and he's already starting to feel better, and he's watched like 200 million hours of TV. So we'll see how it goes, but at least I've not got any symptoms yet, even though I'm in close proximity with him. But I just fingers crossed that it'll stay like that, of course.
Yeah, so you're fully vaccinated, so that's,
I am, yeah.
If you get it, I mean, the reason you are vaccinated, that is that it should hopefully be mild. So, knock on
Hopefully,
wood, everyone will stay healthy and he'll get better very soon. I have to admit, when I was a teenager, 10's a little young, but when I was a teenager, I think I would have adored being locked in my room with a whole bunch of books and some music and comic books and been like, yes, just bring me food and tea. I'll be fine. Just leave me in here for a month.
Yeah, I think like a 16, 17, 18-year-old, they would love that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I would too at that age, but 10, no. That's a bit too young.
Yeah. I was always a drawer, so as long as my crayons were with me and some markers, I probably might be fine in there for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, true. But I mean, due to all of these things, I haven't really written much this last week, so I'm not too happy about that, but what can you do?
We'll get back on track. It's fine. Life happens.
And how about you?
Oh, I already hinted I had a bit of a story. So this is one that there's a lot going on in my life right now. Everything from a sick dog that has kept me up, and I'm hoping I can stay coherent for the entire podcast because I'm on it's like, having a baby every hour and a half. The dog needs to go out. And so I'm so tired. This is day 4 in a row. Parents, I don't know how you do it. I really don't know how you do it, but I can handle a dog for about a week, and then I'm like, oh, please just get better. But I had an interesting thing that I had to share with you and the listeners that happened. As you know, I was just down at my parents' house, and it was so much fun. It was great being a kid again and getting to be spoiled with my parents and then taking me out. But the day I went to leave was actually my brother's birthday. And as you know, my brother passed away in 2000, so 21 years ago. He actually would have been 51. And my parents and I were sitting around this little island in the kitchen, and I'm like, today would have been his birthday, right? And they're like, yeah. And my mom said, well, it's funny. It's like he's there because his youngest son and my one cousin are the spitting image of my brother, all the way down to his voice. And just as my mom was saying that, and my dad was agreeing, the 2 drop-down lights above our head popped, like, really loud, and blew. But they didn't just blow, they blew the entire circuit in the kitchen. And this is a newish house, it's less than 10 years old. They've just built it. And so, we're like, oh gosh, that's quite the timing. After my brother passed away, they actually had a whole bunch of electronical issues that happened in our old house. So we're like, that was really funny. Haha, it's your brother. And so my dad's like, okay, he went, fixed the circuit, not a big deal. And as we're sitting back down, finishing up breakfast, I've got an 8-hour drive ahead of me, so I'm trying to get ready to go. Mom's like, oh, I thought it was that light that blew. Dad's like, no, it's that light. So they turned back on the lights. They both worked. They didn't blow either light. They're both halogens. So when they blow, they're like this pain in the butt to change. But yeah, it was, they turned back on the lights and they were fine. We didn't blow either light bulb. And so we just kind of sat there a few minutes like, that's really weird. That's never happened before. Kind of, acknowledged, hey, happy birthday, bro, and had a few minutes of silence. And then we got to get busy today. So I thought that was that's so weird.
That's amazing.
It was
so
really...
all the lights went out, and then you could just turn them on again as if nothing happened, or what?
Well, we had to switch the circuit breaker, but there's no reason. I mean, it's not just that the circuit blew; the lights popped. I won't even do it on radio. It popped so loud, it was right over my head that I jumped off the stool. It was so amazingly loud. It blew the entire circuit in the kitchen.
That's incredible.
And then when they turned back the lights on, everything worked fine. No smell of smoke, nothing. The house didn't burn down since then. It was just so strange.
It was just a sound from beyond.
Yes. And even my husband's not quite into souls and spiritual beliefs at the moment. And he's like, well, we are all, every motion in your body is done through electrical impulses from your brain. He's like, so, yeah, your brother would screw with the electronics or the electrics. And
Right.
yeah, so it really felt like he was there with us for a moment, being his normal troublesome self.
That's actually a good story.
Yeah,
I like stuff like that.
I thought you liked that
I
one.
I really don't know what I think about the whole souls and spirits and so on, but I'm also not in the place where I could say that I don't believe in it. I can't say that either, but I'm also not sure if I do believe in it. It's I think it's very difficult.
I think it does take time, but there's enough things that have happened in my life. I do believe that there is consciousness beyond our physical bodies. And that's how I
Yeah.
would put it. Whether you want to call it a soul or what, I don't like the religious context, you know that, but I do think there's a consciousness that is greater than the sum of our parts and that exists beyond our physical bodies. So yeah, I would be surprised that my brother would hang around for 21 years to drop by on his birthday, but as you know, he had a tragic death, so if anyone would have, maybe he would. And it was really interesting, though. It was just when we mentioned how much my
Yeah,
cousin
yeah,
and his
exactly.
youngest son are so much like him. At least look like him.
And if you should
Attitude, totally different.
and if you should drop by at any day, that it would be that day,
His
right?
birthday,
So
yeah. It'd either be the
yeah,
day he died, which it wasn't. It was on his birthday, which, yeah, that would be. Especially him and my mom were like, they're two peas in a pod. Their personalities were so similar. They'd call each other like 5-6 times a day. So,
right.
yeah, I could see him stopping by on his birthday to say hi to my mom.
Nice. I like that story. Good story.
Right.
Thank you.
A week on the internet with the Am Writing Fantasy podcast.
So we got our monthly critical reading started, didn't we, Autumn?
Yes, we did. It's very exciting to get see people voting on the books and getting into the one we've chosen.
Yeah, because in the next few weeks we will do the episode where we will analyze last month's book pick, which was the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin.
Yes.
However, it is now time to pick the book for October.
It doesn't seem
And
possible already.
yeah, it's crazy. But that's the way it goes. Time flies when you're having fun, as they say.
Very true.
But as a reminder, the way this works is that we've created a poll in the Am Writing Fantasy Facebook group. And here you can vote on which of 3 books you want us to read and analyze next month. Of course, we would love for you to read along, and if you're a Patreon supporter, you will even be able to provide us with your views on the book, and we might just share that on air as well.
Yes.
So do you want me to share the books that we have the voting up for, Autumn?
Yes, unless you want to paste them in a chat, because I did not grab them before we started recording. Again, I'm a little tired today. I'm about as fuzzy as my dog, so I did not prepare for that. I prepared for the rest of the episode, though. I did do that.
Oh, well, that's already progress, so okay. I'll not hold it against you then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The books we picked this month, the winner of the World Fantasy Award. It is called Witchmark by C.L. Polk. Or another winner of the World Fantasy Award, which is The Sudden Appearance of Hope by Claire North. Or finally, a third winner of the World Fantasy Award. Yeah, there's kind of a theme going on here. But the final one that you can vote for is Jade City by Fonda Lee. So the voting has already started in the Am Writing Facebook group, so either go there and place your vote, or if you want to become a more integral part of the process here, then go and join on Patreon. There's a link in the show notes for that as well.
Sounds good. I think we should give the Patreon votes like double points, because they're special.
They're more important.
They're more important.
Yeah.
And I think if you or I vote, because I have a vote on this one, that we should get like 10 points. But that's my opinion.
Well, we're not allowed to vote. This is the
Oh,
people voting. It's not us voting.
but we're readers too.
Yeah, but they force us to read Autumn, and then we just read what the people want us to read. That's the
I
way it
guess.
works.
Well, it could be a worse job.
Yeah. But speaking of Patreon, by the way, we also want to give Nancy Hurst a huge shout out. Thank you so much for becoming a Patreon supporter, Nancy. It really makes a difference. And well, without people like you, we would probably not keep the podcast going for very long. So
Very true. Thank you, Nancy, and welcome to Patreon. We appreciate your support.
And on to today's topic.
So before we get into this, we should probably say that where we share maps that were actually created for books or games or movies or something like that, the intention here today isn't to hate on those maps.
Oh.
So everything we say in this episode is meant as like humoristic views on maps. So there are probably those of you out there listening who might like some of the maps that we are going to mention. And you know what? That is perfectly fine.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with it. So basically just take everything we say from this point onward as entertainment rather than critical assessment of the maps. Does that sound fair, Autumn?
That sounds very fair. This is definitely, it was a pet peeve or something we point out. It's a personal opinion. Other people may totally disagree, and that's fine. We're just looking at it from our own perspectives and to have a little bit of fun and poke some fun at maps because, if you want to pull up one of mine and poke fun, please have at it. I'm fine with that.
yeah, for sure. I mean, as I said, this is just entertainment, guys. So it's a one of our worst top 10 lists. So we wanted to talk about maps. So yeah, essentially we have to find some maps that we don't quite like, but so be it.
So be it. I think we managed.
Yeah. So we should alternate like we normally do, Autumn, and
Sounds good.
and then go through this stuff.
Yeah, I remember last time, probably because I did the post-production recording and stuff, that I went first last time, so I think it's your turn to go first. Sorry.
Ooh, okay.
Okay,
yeah. One day I'll make up my mind if I prefer to go first or last, but I still don't know, so maybe it's actually a good thing just to get the decision made for me.
There you go. Well, I was happy to do that because, as we've said, this is a partnership, so it's good if we both make decisions occasionally.
Yeah, I think this is the fourth time you point that out today, so I don't know what's going on, but something is going on.
I'm picking on you today. It's fun.
Yeah, you think it's fun. I'm not so sure I do. I like when I pick on you, Autumn, but the other way around, that's not so fun.
But these lists are all about, giving back as good as you get. So here we go.
Okay, well, I can start with my number 5, but
all right. I
must also say that it felt a bit different making this top 10 list compared to some of the other ones that we've made in the past, because it's a bit more like, for example, the last one we made with like the worst superpowers. Some of it was really wacky and stupid and fun.
Yes.
Whereas this is slightly more serious in the way that it's a bit like
that's true.
Personal opinion, like you said before. It's not like fun like that in that sense that it's just silly and stupid, right? Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, but let me get going here. And number 5 is not the worst map that I've seen, which is also, of course, why it's number 5 rather than number 1. But I decided to include a map which some people might disagree with me about, but that's okay. I can take it. It's okay.
Excellent.
But it's the map for Wheel of Time.
Okay. Well, that's a famous one.
It's very famous, yes. But I've always found this map quite boring.
All right.
It's just boring. Like it's one huge, large chunk of land. And then there's one of my pet peeves in there as well. You have the 90-degree angled mountain range again. And I freaking hate those.
Yeah.
What? Why do they keep popping up on maps all over the place? I don't understand.
Oh,
mountains will never ever form like that. So when I see it, I'm instantly like pulling my hair out. Like, why do you do that? Please stop.
Yeah, a sort of magic that would not... I can't imagine how that would happen in nature. So I do agree with you. In fact, I might be mentioning something about maps that do that later. Not quite on this one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But,
because, I mean, I could also have used the map for the Lord of the Rings, but we have sort of pre-agreed ahead of time that we were not going to put that on the list, because if we did, we would probably both have it on the list. Not because Lord of the Rings is a bad map. In general, I actually quite like it, but it's just the mountains around Mordor that have... It's the same issue again here. And I don't like... I mean, Tolkien did have a reason for it. We won't get into all of that now, what Tolkien had a reason for it and so on, but it's just like, come on. I mean, I don't know if it's because Tolkien did it and then everybody started copying or something. I don't know, but it drives me insane. And then there is also on this Wheel of Time map, like in the bottom left corner of the map, there's something called the Windbiter's Finger.
Oh.
And it's sort of like, it almost looks like a small island that forms a finger or something, but it just looks really weird. So we'll put a link to it in the show notes, so have a look yourself. But I don't know, I don't like it. Yeah. It's not my favorite map. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's certainly not my favorite.
Yeah, and I'm picturing it. It's been a while since I've seen that one, but I do know what you mean. It's never stood out to me as a great for a book that has become sort of like a hallmark of a fantasy series. It's kind of a map. I will agree with you there.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't really studied. I haven't read the books. I will admit it. I have never read The Wheel of Time. It's too long for me to even contemplate until I'm locked into a room because I have COVID and someone's serving me tea, and then maybe I'll go through them, or I'm locked on a desert island. Then I'll read The Wheel of Time. Until then, I'm a little busy. That's a lot of books. Yeah. But yeah, it's
I got to book 6, I think it was, and then I gave up, and it's just. I mean, I understand the people who like it, but just for my taste, it is way too slow paced. It's just like nothing happens, and on book after book after book, where it's just like, I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I specifically remember some places where you spend an entire chapter where nothing other happens than they need to exit a tent, and it takes them all chapter to exit the tent, and it's like, come on, move, people! It drives me crazy.
Okay, I'd have to it'd be at the bottom of my book pile, and I was desperate for me to get through all of them, and that's really tough.
Yeah.
Right.
I gave up, but maybe you're hinting at somebody who needs to serve you tea all the time, and I don't know what you were hinting at there, but maybe you'll read it one day when that happens.
Yes, I will hope so. Considering my husband is still currently away in Maine, he's not getting this hint, so it's just me and the dog. You ready for my number 5?
Okay, yeah, let's go.
So this one, there is an example later in my list, so I'm not going to share it now, but this is more of a generic one of my pet peeves, and it's pretty easy to explain. But names of places that are in a font that is nearly illegible, even when it's at full scale, those big, fancy fantasy fonts, and then you take that and you shrink it to fit it into like a Kindle. Why do you even bother naming places when you cannot read it unless it is full poster size, and then you maybe have a magnifying glass? It's just, I don't know, that just gets me every time. I'm just like, why do you do that? The terrain is already so difficult, and you have trees, and you have this, and then you have this loopy font that you're like, I don't even know what that says, and it's in Elvish. Why?
Yeah, I know why. I know what you mean. I like to enjoy maps, I'm such a fantasy map enthusiast that I love looking at the maps, and I can actually spend quite a lot of time just sitting there looking at all the details. And then if there's something I can't read or I can't see what it is, it's quite annoying, to be honest.
Yeah, and especially I think a lot of authors, if they get a nicely done fantasy map, or if they do it themselves and they use these fonts, they forget that when it's on your Kindle, or even when a paperback book, I mean, we're talking about a very small image 3 inches by 4 inches, maybe. It's tiny. It should be very clean. And yeah, I've seen some maps that you just kind of look at and you're like, why? I don't even know what this is trying to tell me. Why did you put it in there? And I think that's just such a frustration. That's sort of why it's a pet peeve. It's just like, this isn't, you don't want to open it up and be like, oh, I love maps. Maps are awesome. I cannot read this. Why did you put
indeed.
it in there?
Exactly.
All right.
I'm with you there.
Okay. Well, we're agreeing, so I'm winning. Awesome.
Oh, well, I don't know. Well, you agreed to the Wheel of Time as well, so we're even at least now.
All right, okay. Good memory. I was trying to trick you there.
Okay, well, my number 4, I might even get even more people on my back for this one.
This is exciting. Everyone pick on Jesper with me. No.
Yeah, I already mentioned Wheel of Time, which some people probably love, so that's a problem. But now I'm going to go all in and get even more people upset with me, because now I'm going to mention one of Brandon Sanderson's maps.
Oh, you're just asking to get yelled at.
I'm asking for trouble.
You really are. Oh, geez. So what is wrong with one of Brandon Sanderson's maps?
Well, this is the one for Warbreaker.
Okay.
And it's in a city, so it's a map of a city.
Okay.
And
this one.
And in my personal opinion, as I said before, I love looking at maps, so they should be visually appealing. And they should look good, in my view. And it should be something that readers want to spend time enjoying. And this one is not. I mean, it's black and white. There's not necessarily anything bad about black and white maps. That might be okay. In my opinion, again, I do like colors, because I think it adds a lot more to the map when there's colors on it. But it's just like the way that the city has been drawn. It's hand drawn, but it's extremely busy. It's just like houses all over the map.
Yeah.
Everywhere there's houses. And I get that it's probably resembling what a medieval city would look like. But it's just way too busy. And I mean, have a look at it. I'll play. There'll be a link to that one in the show notes as well. But have a look, because I think you know what I mean when you see it.
Yeah, and I have seen this one. I think it's drawn 3D, but not from the top, more like kind of a
bit
side
from the
angle.
side, kind of. Yeah,
and so you don't really see the streets. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
It's just houses everywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't help you. It doesn't work well as a map. It works better as like, I drew a picture of a city. And it's not really a map.
No. Well, you can have a map of a city, but then at least try to reduce the amount of houses in there and make it a bit like something that is you have some other things than houses to look at. Something that sort of makes you want to investigate all the parts of the map and look over there. There's a small fountain, or just make it a bit more appealing and interesting instead of just 200 million houses stacked on top of each other.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
No,
but
no.
Yeah. So now I both insulted Wheel of Time and Warbreaker. I don't know where to go from here.
Oh gosh, and you're only at number 4. I can't imagine where we're gonna go from here. If you touch Dragonlance, people are going to like flay you and bonfire you or something.
I can promise I'm not gonna go there.
Okay, good. I just want to keep you safe. All right.
Yeah.
Well, my number 4 is sort of what you've already hit it at. You had mentioned perpendicular mountains, but for me, I put number 4 as impossible terrain. As in, not magical terrain. Like, 'cause floating islands, that's fine, it's magical. But, I mean, illogical, cannot happen. Like, rivers flowing through or up mountains, which I have seen, or around lakes, which would not happen. Mountains, like you mentioned, that are perpendicular, or just randomly placed, like someone dropped a bag of mountains right onto their map and it's scattered all over. Or, this is a fun one, which I don't know how many people have noticed. Continents that are perpendicular to each other. And my example for this is Game of Thrones. Have you ever noticed that Westeros and now I can't even remember where the Dothraki are. They're like completely right angles to each other.
They are, yeah.
Oh, would you?
And the other thing is, with the Game of Thrones maps, the other thing is that it doesn't even look very good. It just looks weird.
It does look weird.
I mean, if you cut out all the basically, if you think about the Game of Thrones intro thing, where the camera goes around the map and all that, that looks cool. Right, that looks extremely cool. But also, as long as you're focusing on the upside down map of England, which is basically Game of Thrones, if you focus only on Westeros there, then that looks good, actually, in my mind. I think that looks perfectly fine. But then when you take all I also don't remember the name of it, but all the lands with the Dothraki and all that out there, when you put that onto the map as well, it just looks weird.
It does. It does not. It's too... It's like someone put England, made it the same size as all of Europe, and just put it at the end outside of Portugal. And it's just like, that wouldn't happen. How would that happen? I don't get it. And even that, I actually have another example. So I did think about this. Cities, they don't bother me so much when they kind of seem to be somewhere where maybe a city wouldn't exist, because that gets me curious. I always think, well, the author had a reason for putting a city there, so maybe there's more to this. Yeah, maybe not. I always give them the benefit of the doubt. So I think, maybe there's a story. I'm willing to at least hold my criticism of cities just appearing in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it's an ancient ruin and I just don't know that by looking at the map. But have you ever seen Terry Brooks' Shannara map, where there are rivers that literally go nowhere? I mean, they flow, and you can see them come together, these tributaries, and they flow off and they go into other tributaries. It's like an Escher sketch of a map. I mean, stylistically, it's like, it makes me want to, I want to make an Escher sketch of a fantasy world. It makes no sense. So I will link to that one in the show notes. But I looked at that, and I think this is my example too for a font that you're like, why did you use that font? But then you start looking at the rivers, and they're going up mountains, they're just there's lakes, they flow into lakes and then never out of them, which can happen, but not 6 times on the same map. It's just it's one of those ones that, as a hydrologist, I studied environmental science, and I'm looking at this going, no. Rivers don't flow together and then flow apart and just branch off and disappear into the wilds. It just doesn't make sense.
No, yeah. Well, what you're saying, not with rivers, but the stuff that doesn't make sense, that's actually my number 3 pick as well here.
Oh, go figure. Again, we met, if the listeners do not know this, we kind of met because of fantasy maps, so I would have kind of not be surprised that we have some of the same things on our list of pet peeves.
Yeah, it's also a pet peeve, but I have a concrete one here, though, for my number 3. But basically, again, with things that doesn't make any sense, right? But here we're back to mountain ranges again for my 3rd pick.
Okay.
And I don't know. Tell me, why do we keep seeing this problem with mountain constantly? I don't get it. But this 3rd one on my list is the world of Warhammer.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've seen this.
So this is a miniature wargaming setting.
Okay.
In the middle of the ocean in this map, you have a very large circular island.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you guessed it, there's mountains formed in a freaking circle.
Volcanic? It could be a massive caldera. No?
Yeah. This is where the elves lives in the setting, and it's been a long, long while since I read the lore for the setting, but if I remember, there is a reason for it.
Okay.
But honestly, I can't quite remember, and also I don't really care, because it really rubs me the wrong way to see mountains shaped in a circle. It's just like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, short of a massive caldera, Santorini volcanic kind of area, otherwise it doesn't make much sense. Massive asteroid impact that kind of thrust up the land on both sides. But in general, no, mountains don't form right angles and they don't form circles. You have a very weird planet if they do.
Yeah. And what even makes this map even worse, and why it's number 3 as opposed to number 5, which also had weird mountains, is that it's like, take a look at the Warhammer map. We'll link to it in the show note as well. But take a look at it, and then tell me that it doesn't look exactly like a copy of Earth. You have North and South America, there's Europe, there's Russia, there's Africa, you even have Asia and Australia.
Oh no.
And the only difference is that in the middle of the ocean there is this circular elven kingdom with circular mountains, but otherwise everything else is exactly like Earth.
So
come on.
Took the Atlantis myth, stuck it in the middle of the Atlantic, called it where the elves came from, and called it a new world.
But honestly, couldn't you come up with something just a bit more original than that? I mean, just have a look at it. It's insane how much is just a copy of Earth. My God.
That is funny. And that's actually a nice segue into my number 3, which is different. For this one,
I think we had coordinated this.
I know. Sometimes it all works out. No, it's always surprising when we're on like the same stream of things, but it happens occasionally. So this one,
occasionally,
like every time we talk,
I like the passive aggressive comment. It happens occasionally.
I'm being sarcastic. I think it happens every time we talk. We're like, oh yeah, I was already thinking of that. It's the easiest partnership ever. I won't tell people that. I let them think that we're constantly combating like we are on our top 10 lists. So my number 3 is, have you ever... It's a Terry Goodkind map, and not to pick on him because he's a good author. But this example is just a good example of one that I find so frustrating, and it's sort of what you just said. It's so generic that it can be anywhere or any continent, which makes me wonder, how good is the story? How original is any of this when you look at it and you go like, oh, that's Earth, or oh, that's a continent with an ocean, and it's like the Westmorelands, the North,
right,
the Valley. Yeah. Oh my gosh, please. Just make it interesting. Make it original. Don't just make it... It looks like you took a piece of the Gulf of Mexico and a little bit of Texas and gave it a different name and put it in a river and called it somewhere new.
There you go.
What? Yeah. No, it's horrible.
Right. I don't think I've seen that one, to be honest.
It's not in color. It's just like a antique paper and black, so black and white basically. And it's just line drawings, and it literally just looks like anywhere. This is one of those ones where I think you've seen the map, they call it Clichéville or Cliché Land.
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my favorite maps because it is so well done. And
it's quite funny.
Hilarious. Yes, the Dragon Tail Islands, it's, again, the setting that every fantasy map has these exact same settings, and it's hilarious to look at. Well, this one is sort of the same way, but not done to the gorgeous color quality of that one. And it's just black and white, and you look at it and you're like, it could be Mexico, it could be a bay in Alaska, there's so many places that you're like, it's like, James Bay upside down. It's...
Yeah.
It could be anywhere, and it doesn't inspire any excitement. You look at it and you're like, I don't know where I am. Why did you make a map of, like, my backyard? I don't care.
No, and of course the major difference is also that whether it's supposed to be a serious map versus one like Cliché is just the Cliché map world. That's meant to be just fun and goofy, right? And there's a big difference in that.
It is.
Yeah.
And the Cliché one is definitely, it's done so well that I would actually buy it as a poster. It is beautiful, and it is funny. So funny. It is so funny. So I should find that, and I'll try to link to that in the show notes as well.
Okay, good. All right, well, moving on to my number 2. So it's starting to get more and more nasty now.
Oh, yeah.
But my number 1 is even worse. But
I can't wait.
But this one is... It's not far off what you were just talking about, in the sense that...
Following the same...
This is like... this is like somebody sat down and then they sort of brainstormed, like,
oh no,
what do I normally find on a fantasy map? And then they made a list, like a checklist of that. And then they started just checking them off one by one. Put this on the map, put that on the map. Everything that, just one of each. So this one is the fictional world of Aragon.
Okay.
And this is the map that they used for the Inheritance Cycle novels. And basically it's like you find a volcano, check. You find a Grand Lake, check. Then there are some islands off the coast. Check again. A single forest. Good. And then next to that, there's next to the forest, there's a single desert. Check.
Yep.
So I might be a bit harsh here, but I really don't like the map, and also because they've placed the desert right smack in the middle of the entire map, and it just looks really weird. But I don't know. Sorry if somebody likes this map, but I'm just not a fan. It just feels like a checklist map, and then just smashed together. There you go. Here's a fantasy map. And yeah, I'm not a fan.
No, it sounds like my impossible terrain. Why is there a desert next to a forest? I mean, there's
this one is as well. There's a huge forest and then a desert right next to it.
That's just strange. I mean, where you would find that in nature without grasslands or a mountain, a rain shadow, or a high plateau to cause lack of rain, I don't know. That would drive me crazy. I'd be looking at it going,
Beats me.
I've taken too many classes on geology. I think it would drive me insane. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good one. I'll have to check that one out. I don't think I've actually seen the map, so that one will be interesting to take a peek at.
Yeah. Have a look at the link in the show notes.
All right. Well, my number 2 is one that there are some examples out there, but I couldn't find a good one that I wanted to link to. So I'm just going to describe it. And that is maps with place names that are named descriptively based on like if you were holding the map and looking down at it. And the people on the ground would never be able to see that pattern, or the places where it is a vast continent with areas separated by large obstacles, yet the names all sound the same. So there's kind of two different maps there. So it's like, this massive continent the size of Asia, and something at the far east and the far west sounds like they're from the exact same culture. That always kind of like, what? Right. No, they should be different. I want to see some representation of different cultures and different types of people and climate on your map, because that makes me curious to know what's different and where things. I love traveling. That's why I look at these maps. I want to know what's going on. But then you have those other maps, and one of the examples, and I couldn't find an actual link to it, was a map that, kind of looked like a body, and so there was like the heartland was literally where the heart was, and the headlands, and the...
Right, yeah.
No, I don't care if it looks like
cool.
that. Unless they have hot air balloons or were named by a god or goddess, they don't know it looks like that. That's just silly. No. So it was sort of like your number 5. You mentioned something about the Finger Islands or something. It's just no. Yeah. So sometimes if there's a mountain and you can stand there and look off and think, oh, they're like fingers, and you name it that way, fine. But in general, you don't go, oh my goodness, this looks like a lotus flower. I'm going to name this Lotus Island. No, you don't do that.
No, it doesn't. It definitely requires that you get far away from far above the land, and you can see it from distance. Otherwise, you would never recognize patterns like that.
No, and it just drives. When I look at it, I'm like, it's like the Nazca lines. We have been debating how the Nazca lines were made and who they were made for centuries now. And it's just like, don't do that to your readers. You don't want them to be confused over the map and why you named it the elbow when no one knows it looks like an elbow.
Fair enough, yeah.
All right.
Okay, are you ready for the worst of my list here?
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. I want to hear what is the worst map you have found.
Oh my god. So, the number 1 on my list made it here because it's just too lazy for my taste. And I'll start explaining why, and then it's gonna sound pretty much like something I already said, but then there's a kicker at the end. Okay. So I mentioned before how Warhammer, the Warhammer map, is just a copy of Earth. Well, this one is basically the same, but it's just for Europe. So this is I think you pronounce it Kushiel world map or something like that. We'll link to it in the show notes as well. But there are 3 trilogies written in this setting, and while I do understand that they are supposed to be a fictional version of medieval Western Europe, so I do understand that, but honestly, it just doesn't cut it for me when you practically just take a map of Europe, slap some new country names on it, and call it a day. That's not a fictional map.
No.
I mean, this is where I mean, like, that sounds very much like what I just said about Warhammer, because it's basically the same thing. But if you are naming the country on your map that everybody can see when you know Europe, you can see that it's Denmark, and I'm from Denmark, and instead of writing Denmark, you call it Jutland. And as a Dane, I can tell you that a part of our country, the part of our country that connects to Germany just south of us, is called Jutland in real life. That's what it's called. So for a fictional setting, which I'm supposed to be immersed in, don't freaking put names in there that it's called in my national language. That's the name of the place.
That is
for
pretty
freaking sake. It's horrible.
That'd be like me. I just wrote the Tainted Fae series, and it takes place in this world in this time, but a different version where there's fae and magic. And if I had included a world map, why bother? So, yeah, and then to say it's fantasy and use real place names.
But I can imagine. I don't honestly. I have to admit that I don't know what nationality the author of the Kushul series, what nationality it is. But I can imagine, and I might be mistaken. And if I'm mistaken, then I'm apologizing in advance. But I have a feeling that it might be somebody who doesn't know the geography maybe that well of Europe. And then they just think like Jutland. That sounds like some fantasy kind of. Well, maybe, but it's a real name of a real place. So at least do some googling first and figure out if it's a real name before you put it on the map.
Or at least if you're gonna, if you're gonna call it fantasy, don't stay away from real worlds. Like words, if you found it and you're like, oh, no one uses that anymore, or that was the historic name, just stay away from it. It's not worth it.
Yeah. And if you're then telling me that the author actually did know that this is the real name and then put it on the map, well, then I'm going to tell you, then it only makes it even worse.
Yes.
Because then you knew about it, and then what the heck are you then doing? I mean, it makes no sense to me.
Oh, yeah, that's, again, to me, almost like lazy world building. If you're going to create a new world, and you're going to call it a new fantasy setting, make a new map. And if you have a hard time coming up with fantasy images or a fantasy landscape, like you just want to write a story and you want someone to hand you a map, there are programs and people who can do that for you. That is not a problem. Heck, I just found out how to randomly make a fantasy map in like 15 minutes. I was like, oh, this is too much fun. It just creates random things. I mean, it's 3D and it looks pretty, and you can start creating a story based on just something someone hands you. It's better. If world building and map making is not your forte, get someone to do it for you and give you a hand. All right.
Yes, please.
You ready for my number one? This is a good lead in to what my number one is, because it kind of shows that I am a graphic designer, I have to admit.
Okay.
So my number one is maps that look like you sketched it while you were potentially drunk, or you had a migraine and you just wanted to call it done. It's good enough. I just hate that. So there are software out there. There are cartography programs. There are graphic designers. There are people who can make you even a simple map that is quite lovely. It can be black and white. It can be color. But don't just do these like little line sketches. And I actually have an example for you. Have you ever seen Anne Bishop? She writes dark fantasy, and she has some of the worst maps I've ever seen. I mean,
oh my god!
If
there's any Anne Bishop fans out there, they're just gonna come and murder you now.
They're gonna murder me now. Or they might agree. I mean, they're line drawings. They're just black and white, but there's no passion to them. There's no interest to them. They're so simple. They're simplistic. They're painful. They're really painful. It's just, you look at it and you're like, what is the point?
I've not seen them.
Yeah, I will link to it in the show notes, but you look at it and you're like, what was the point of including this? It's just, some trees, some land. It's so boring that I would look at it and I would probably not even pick up the book. I'd open up to the map and go, if this is all the time and effort you put into making a map, and it looks like you sketched it with some thick lines over it and you called it good and published it, if that's all, what's your editing gonna look like? I am making an immediate judgment call, which isn't probably right, but that is what we do. We judge books by their cover. We're gonna judge it by their formatting, and we're definitely gonna judge it by what that map looks like, and it's gonna greet us pretty early in the novel before we even start reading. And if I see a horrible map, I'll be like, oh, well, there's your book. What quality are you gonna have in there? So the Anne Bishop one was just one that I was like, oh, this is so painful. I can't believe this isn't like a published novel. This is really bad.
Oh my god, I'm curious to see how much hate we're gonna get on the back of this episode, because essentially it's gonna be like, here are the worst maps, and then in the show notes there's just gonna be a list of names of settings and all kinds of things that all the bots on the internet can pick up, and then, oh my god, I could just see how much hate we're gonna get on the back of all this. But as I said in the beginning, it's meant as entertainment, so take it for what it is.
It's a personal opinion, but Anne, if you need a better map maker, come talk to me, because lady, your books, people say you write gorgeous, wonderful books, but your maps, blah, they're just horrible.
So I don't really know, how do we declare a winner of these two top 5 lists here, Autumn, because it's I think it's a bit difficult.
I think short of you just admitting I won, which is fine, I think that we
What?
I think we might have to leave this one to the listeners if they don't, come at us with pitchforks and torches for having pointed out maps that they absolutely adore. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, at least as far as controversy goes, and I guess we stepped our foot in the hornet's nest, or whatever you say in English, but
that's about right.
Yeah. But okay, maybe we'll leave it for listeners to declare a winner here, because honestly, I can't quite make up my mind, because not that I have seen all of the maps that you mentioned, but at least the points you made, I agree with, and I also felt you agreed with the points that I was making. So I don't know. Yeah,
I think we can say the winner is the readers who do not have to see these horrible maps when they pick up a book. So,
all right. Well, we talked a lot about maps today, and of course our lists here were intended as pure entertainment, as I said. But if you are interested in more, like, let's call it proper advice on fantasy map making, and it's not just a lot of goofy, funny stuff that we are sitting here and blurbing out, then or perhaps you just love fantasy maps and you like to geek out about it, then Autumn and I will actually be hosting an online virtual masterclass about fantasy map making in a few weeks from now. So if you are interested in that, and go check out the details via the link in the show notes. That'll take you to the registration page, and I can tell you we are looking so much forward to host this map-making masterclass for the very first time, in fact.
Yes, it'll be so exciting, and we get to geek out about maps, which, again, it's what brought us together, so yay, it'll be awesome.
So next Monday, we are going to discuss learning through author masterclasses and masterminds. How can such forums be helpful for your author career?
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWritingFantasy podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jesper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWritingFantasy podcast going. Stay safe out there and see you next Monday.